Greetings, writers. My name is Jenny, and welcome to my channel. I am here today to walk you through my ultimate Notion pre-writing template. Now, I know that's a lot of words, but I promise I'll explain what it all is. First of all, if you're not familiar with Notion, it is a database centered productivity website slash app that you can access through all of your devices. And as a writer, I was really looking for something that I could access simultaneously through my laptop, through my phone, through my iPad, through all of my different devices in multiple different places. Like I have a work laptop and I have a home laptop, and I wanted to make sure I could reach it everywhere. And Notion wound up being the tool for me. It is 100% free. You can buy like a better upgrade like package if you want some of the bit different bells and whistles, but ultimately if you're free, if you use the free plan, you can do everything that I've kind of talked about today, so it's not a big deal. But if you want the extra bells and whistles, you can look into that. But there is a bit of a steep learning curve. I am going to warn you on that. But if you go down the rabbit hole of like Pinterest and YouTube videos and try to kind of play with it for a while and be patient with yourself and with the app, you will be significantly rewarded for playing with it. Just trust me on this. So I used Notion because I wanted to make sure that I had everything for my story creations. For whatever I was creating, whether it's a screenplay or a novel or you know, whatever I happened to be working on at the time, I wanted to make sure that I had everything ready and in one place. And Notion wound up being the solution for me on that. So I created this template to keep all of my pre-writing into one place. And if you're not familiar with the concept of pre-writing, a lot of us have heard the expression that writing is rewriting, but there's a famous kind of screenwriting guru named John Truby who talks about how writing is actually pre-writing. Pre-writing is all the stuff that you do before you actually kind of like open the document and type, you know, chapter 1 or fade in or prologue or wherever you want to start. It's all the stuff that you do in order to prepare to start, right? And this is not a new or different thing. You know, anybody who's participated in NaNoWriMo or National Novel Writing Month, you know that the month of October is Preptober. You have a whole month to prepare for what you're going to be doing throughout the whole month of November and usually beyond, right? And that's because everything you do before you start is super important. Now, I know some people say, well, I hate outlining and I hate character building and I hate world building and I hate all these other things. But what I often find, because I am a screenwriting instructor, my students who spend the most amount of time with pre-writing, they tend to be the ones who actually finish the thing. So yes, it might take a little bit of the joy of discovery away when you're doing pre-writing, but I promise you have a much higher likelihood of actually finishing if you are doing all that extra legwork on the front end, because you don't get stuck. You're not just like, well, where do I go from here? You've already figured that out before you started. So I'm going to stop talking. I know you want me to shut up so we can dive right into this. So let's check it out. So this, I know, is what you're all here for, is my ultimate pre-writing Notion template. Now you can see I have a couple different options here. Some of these we're going to go a lot deeper into on future videos, so keep a lookout for that. This is basically when you get into a new project, this is where you're going to start. So anytime you start a new project, you obviously want to go ahead and change the template to the title of whatever it is that you're doing, right? Title of work. And you would put your title there. And then you start doing a deep dive into all these different sections to help build out your project. So here on this introduction page, you're going to see you have quick links to all of the different sections of pre-writing. So you're going to have an outline, a story circle, arc progressions, characters, world building, and I have a bonus, which is not pre-writing, but it is your submission tracker. So once you're done with the thing, when you're done with the novel, you're done with the screenplay, where are you going to send it out to? I have something there for that as well, and I will show you that by the end of this video, so hang on tight for that. Now, in terms of all of this kind of metadata information that's going to be here on this front page, what you want to start off with is this working log line. Now, if you're not familiar with the concept of a log line, it's basically a one sentence summary of your work, right? And as you're going through and you're writing, you may not know right away what you want it to be, but that's why it's a working log line, right? So let's say, after a meteor crashes, if I can spell, into the planet, um, a dog tries to save his owner, right? That's suddenly what our story is going to be about. So as you're starting to write, maybe you realize, you know what, I don't really want to focus on the dog. I want to focus on the owner, or maybe I want to focus on a cat instead of a dog. But this working log line, as your story evolves and changes, you go back and you kind of update it. And the idea is that by the time you're done with all of your pre-writing, you should have a very clear sense of what your story is about, right? What is your pole star? What is it that's keeping you moving forward throughout the rest of the story? In a perfect world, if you have this logline created really, really well, then you should be able to actually use this in your query letter, or if you're sending things out for competitions, things like that, you should be able to use that directly for that, right? Then down here, you're going to have these themes. This is where you can put your working themes. So let's say you want to look at, friendship, or survival skills, right? And these are really, really broad in general, but then eventually you might want to say, okay, I'm going to develop my themes as I'm working the story, so friendship is more important than food. I don't know how true that is, but for now we're just going to say that. So as you're developing, you're going to go through and you're going to develop that. Here I also have a word tracker as well. So this is obviously a few years old in terms of my dating, but you can update this for any NaNoWriMo that you want to do. So you can say, okay, what time did I work? When was I the most productive? How many words did I do in that session? And because you're not supposed to do any kind of editing during NaNoWriMo, you can also write notes to yourself, right? So you might say, hey, halfway through the chapter, I added a character. I need to go back and put them in the beginning. Or you might write a note like, Bob the dog has purple eyes. Whatever it is, you can keep track of that so that as you're going through, you can keep it updated. I also have this section here, which is really helpful for me. Not every writer might want to use this, but what I like to do is when I finish a chapter or when I finish a scene, I like to kind of have any kind of plot element. So is it my inciting incident? Is it my, crisis point? I log in what characters are in that scene. But the most important thing for me is I like to track the word counts of all of my individual chapters when I'm writing a novel, because sometimes I'll write a novel, a chapter for a novel that's like 8,000 words, and then I'll write another one's like 2,500 words. And I like to keep my chapters relatively equal throughout. So I'm able to kind of keep that in mind when I go back to revise, right? But again, this is all my metadata information. This is not where I'm getting into the nitty gritty. It's where I'm really kind of paying attention to kind of the overall arc of the story. Now that you have all of your metadata done, it's time to dive in and start getting into the nitty gritty of pre-writing. Now there's three primary sections here that I have in this template, and I'm going to get really nitty gritty in future videos, because otherwise this video would be like 3 hours long, because I am a professor and I can talk way more than anybody wants to hear me talk. But for now, I'm going to kind of go through these in broad overview kinds of strokes. And so essentially what you have is you're going to have structure, character creation, and world building. So let's look at the first structure units. Now you'll see I have three separate structural units here. I have outlining, story circles, and arc progressions. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to dive into outlining. Now this is going to be kind of the most basic kinds of structural analysis that you'll do. This is where, when most people talk about structure, this is kind of what they're thinking of doing, right? So what I have here is I have a overview for the Save the Cat beat sheet. Now, if you're not familiar what it is, I do have a reference video here from the official Save the Cat YouTube channel, so you can get a sense what all these different beats are. But this predominantly comes out of the world of screenwriting, but it can also be used for a lot of novel writing structures as well. However, if you don't really like Save the Cat, you can replace it with whatever you want. If you want to use, the basic 3-act structure or a 4-act structure, if you want to use, the hero's journey, or you have kind of a specialized template. So like YouTuber Jenna Marici has a really good one. Any of those kinds of things, you can plug it in any way you want. But this is really a true, just kind of a beat sheet outlining thing, right? So here you can see, if you have, an opening image. So with our story with, the dog saving his owner in the apocalypse, we might have a dog and his owner, walk down the street. A car almost hits the owner. Um, but the dog saves his life, right? And that's kind of like your opening image. It's going to help define the overall arc, things like that. And then you have all of these different structural units here. Again, I'm going to get more in depth with this later on, but this is really all that it's kind of looking for here. And what I have is these little drop downs, so you can actually kind of hide what those beats are. And if there's just a single beat that you're working on, right? So like, let's say you're looking at the all is lost moment here. So the owner is dead, or so we think. The dog cries at the moon, right? So this is like the saddest moment, that kind of thing. So if that's the only image that you want to work on, you can do that, or you can have it all open up and you can take a look at all of it. Now, some down here, there are some other structural units that you can take a look at, like crafting the character arc, the hero's journey, the paper hearts. All of these have these different kind of structural units that you can take a look at, and you can use whatever one works best for you. Next, what we have is the story circle. Now, if you're not familiar with the story circle, also called the plot embryo, this is basically a modern take on the hero's journey. And it's really looking at an individual character's journey through a story. So you have both the heroic plot embryo and you have the tragic plot embryo. The heroic plot embryo was very much created and kind of popularized by Dan Harmon, and the tragic plot embryo was created by Rachel Stevens and her YouTube kind of university, her Magic Academy for writing, really kind of developed that over the years, right? So you can see there's this visual kind of structure to the journey. And here you have, what is the primary character's arc, and then some other character, right? So you have the primary character, we have the dog, then you'll have another character, and we'll say, it is the main ally, and motivation for the protagonist, and that'll be, the owner, right? And we'll take them through there. Now, with these different ones, you can see here I have that the owner is using the tragic plot embryo, whereas up here we have the dog with the heroic plot embryo. But I have these buttons, so anytime you're interested in getting another embryo for any secondary character, you can just kind of click that button and boom, you have another one that shows up there. So you have tons of options for creating additional embryos as needed, so all of your main characters can get their own structural journey, because just like you want your plot to have an overall structure, you want to make sure that your individual characters have a structure as well. Then, of course, we have the arc progressions. Now, this is something I learned about from Brandon Sanderson. He has, and again, I put a reference video in here for you. He has his entire teaching fantasy and science fiction course from Brigham Young University is all on YouTube, and you can go through every single one of them. And what he talks about here is going to be your plot promises, so things that the plots promises in chapter 1 that have to be paid off by the end of the book. And you're looking at your character arcs, right? So you're looking at what are they lacking at the beginning of the story that they either gain or fail to gain over the course of the story. Again, I'm going to get even more in depth with this when I talk about structure in a later video, right? Next, what we have is we have the character creation section. And this is honestly the section that I am the most excited about. So anytime that you are creating a character, you would just click on here, hit new character, and then you would name your character, right? So we're going to say dog. Now, one of the cool things about Notion is that you do have the option of bringing in images. You can link to things off the internet, or you can just go to Unsplash, right? So if I go to Unsplash and I just look up a dog, this dog will work, right? And so I put him here. I'm going to reposition him so I can see his cute little face, right? And suddenly here he is. Now we're going to say for his dramatic function, he is the protagonist, right? And then we're going to hit this button that says new character. And after a second of thinking, boom, we have all of the information that we want to fill out for that individual character, right? Again, I'm going to go really, really in depth on this on a future video, but you're going to have all the character mechanics. You're going to look at their overall profile, right? If you're going to fill out a social media or a dating profile for them, what's all the stuff that's going to go on there? For a dog, it'd be very strange, but you know what I mean. Right? You're going to look at all of their interpersonal relationships. You're going to look at their dialogue. And then if you want to put any additional images for that character, they can go down here, right? And then if we go back, so then we're probably going to want to create our secondary character, right? Which is going to be the owner, right? And then we'll go into Unsplash one more time. And we'll just say cute guy. And sure, this guy will work. Why not? Right? If he pops up, there we go. We'll reposition him just a little bit. And there we go. We hit that new character template again. And boom, all the things show up once again. Again, in a future video, I'm going to go through all of this, right? But this way you can create all of your characters in one place, right? And what's really cool is now that you have them here, you can drag and drop them in any order you want, right? Now, this first one is just kind of an example, but you can go in and you can edit it however you want, but you can put this in any order that you can. And what's really fun is when you go back to your metadata here on the front page, all of your different characters that you've created will show up, right? So if you want to say the dog is in this chapter and owner is in this chapter, you can now do that and it'll directly link back to that character. So it's a really nice kind of way of just kind of connecting all of your pages. After that, we're going to go into world building. Now, world building is another one of those areas that I'm going to have to do in a completely separate video because there is so much here to cover. However, for now, you can take a look at what is in here. Now, I do have a link down here to World Anvil. Janet and Demetris over at that website and that YouTube channel, what they do about world building is so far beyond anything that I could potentially do. So I have a link there where you can go and check out all of their amazing videos on world building, right? But what we have here is we have all of these different little subsections that you can dive in to help build the world of your story. Now, I do believe kind of in the approach of world building that N.K. Jemisin talks about in her masterclass series on masterclass.com, where she talks about macro world building, right? So that's where you look at the planet and then you get closer and closer in. So you don't kind of start with just your main character and build out, you start at the planet. So here's a description of the planet. So what are the continents like? What are the oceans like? Then you want to look at where does it take place within the planet? What is the weather patterns like there? What is the element X? This is how N.K. Jemisin refers to what is the thing that makes your world different than all the other worlds. And then any kind of world events that have shaped the landscape, right? So if a nuclear bomb went off, there's going to be elements of that throughout within the physical landscape, right? So you want to make sure you're looking for that. Also in here, we have breakdowns for individual towns and individual kind of area of narratives. So you can look at, what is the name of the location? So let's say, now let's say you have 3 different locations, right? So once you click that button, you can see there's a secondary location that shows up. You click the button again and you'll get a third one. So for your primary locations, you can look at what does it look like? What is the weather like? What are the different areas of town of there, right? What is the government like? What is transportation like? Again, I'm going to go through this in a later video in more detail, but you want to make sure you're breaking down all of those big areas. Now here you'll also see in this section, not only do I break down people and culture, but I do have sections for magic systems, right? So how does magic work and how does war and weaponry work? Now, if you're not doing something that takes place, in World War II Germany or in some kind of mythical landscape, then you probably don't need these 2, but they are here for if you need them. There's also a great gallery view where you can go in and build different locations, and then you can have all of the images of your world right there, which is pretty cool. Now, as promised, I'm going to go through my little bonus section here, which is a submission tracker. Now, I mentioned masterclass before. I'm a huge fan of it. And one of my favorite kind of masterclasses is Neil Gaiman. So I do have a nice little touch from the masterclass website, just some inspiration, some anecdotes from Neil Gaiman to help inspire you as you're going through the submission process. But essentially what you'll do is you'll go in here and you'll create a different profile for each agent or publishing company or production company or contest, whoever you want to send to. You'll be able to kind of create a profile for them. So you can look at, why is my book a good fit for them? What do I need to know about them? What kind of interactions have you had with them? This is a great place where if you're kind of scrolling through the internet and you hear so-and-so is going to be opening for submissions on, September 25th, and you want to make sure that you submit to them because they happen to also represent this other writer that you really like, or they represent someone who wrote a book that's in the similar genre as you can write all of those notes down, right? And you can keep all of that. And then what you're able to do is kind of drag it and drop it, kind of like a Kanban board, right? So you have all your research in the far left corridor. If you submit to them, you can put that there. If they write back and say, hey, we want your full manuscript, when are you checking in with them? Did they offer you a representation, give you an offer of representation, or are you going to just assume that they passed, or have they actually passed? Some people say after 6 weeks, if you don't hear from them, just assume it passed. So you can put them there as well. And you can just kind of keep track of all of this right here. Now, if you don't like the Kanban board, you can change the view into something different. But for the most part, I love the Kanban board. I think it is really, really useful. Now you can see by having everything here in one place, and you can access this on any of your laptops, you can access it like on any kind of tablet. I love accessing it on my phone. It is absolutely wonderful to keep everything in one place so that if you have an idea while you're traveling on public transportation, or when you're at work, or you have 5 minutes for a dentist appointment, whatever it is, you can work on it at all times. And that's it. That is my ultimate Notion pre-writing template. And I know I was talking for a very, very long time, but if you are interested in learning more, like and subscribe. I am going to be doing additional videos where I break down those other sections. I'll be getting nitty gritty into the structure. I'll be getting nitty gritty into character, and I'll be getting nitty gritty into world building. And it's not just going to be about what's in the template. It's also going to be about what you can do in order to pre-write. Now, if you are interested in this template, don't at me, but I am having it for sale. You can find the link down below. It is a very affordable price, trust me. So hopefully you guys will love it. Please let me know if you do wind up purchasing it, how it works for you, if there's any errors that need to be corrected. Hopefully there isn't. But happy writing.